this committee meeting of the Regional Delivery Committee, the 12th of August 2026. I'd ask Councillor Davis for Karakia, please.
Tu taua mai I ronga, tu taua mai I raro, tu taua mai I roto, tu taua mai I waho. Kia tau ai, te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, huie, taikie. And that's Scotty Morrison's Karakia. It's come forth from above, below, within, and from the environment, vitality and well-being for all, strengthened in unity.
Thank you. I note Councillor Davies, who is online from foreign parts, looking very suntanned. Apologies. We have apologies from Peter Scott and Nicholas Ward on council business in Invercargill. Are there any other apologies? There are none. Conflicts of interest? I don't believe there are any. There are no public forums, deputations or petitions. I am not aware of any extraordinary or urgent business. And we have no notices of motion. We move then to item number 7, the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any corrections to the wording of those minutes? Thank you. Councillor Robinson, Councillor Gerard seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. We move now to 8 on the agenda, report items for information. 8.1, Core Service Performance Report to Council for the quarter 4, 2025-2026. And I remind councillors that this is a retrospective look at what has happened over a period of time. It is not in the now or today or the future. I would ask then, who's first? Community preparedness?
Overview first.
Overview first. Amy Allison, Director of Strategy and Planning, Carmen Marsh, and supporting cast if required.
Kia ora tātou, councillors and in the chamber and those online. We're really pleased to be presenting you the quarter 4 report for the Canterbury Regional Council. It's not only for this quarter, but also has some year-end results. I draw your attention to those results. Out of the 36 service measures, we have achieved 33, which actually in any sector is a stellar result, particularly given the service measure 1, due to central government direction, we were unable to proceed. So that was outside of our control. Service measure 32, we did miss by 0.5%. If you are thinking we could have rounded up, we may have already done that. So the heretofore assembled officials said, no, please don't round up twice. So very, very, very close. And service measure 2, while it didn't reach the 95% target around resource consent processing, which was a Herculean target, we have shown substantial progress in that space, increasing our processing timeline substantially. So I would draw your attention to, while we missed that target, the previous year's target was 50% and it went up to 95%. So we're not going to claim, we're not going to celebrate necessarily, but I would like to draw attention to the upward trajectory. One other thing before I can hand over to my colleagues for any other commentary, I would remind those in the chamber the difference between an output or service measure and an outcome, because I know this is a common refrain or a common question every time we go through these results. So an outcome or a service measure is something that is directly under our control. It is something that we produce, we do, and it is not something. So often the refrain is, "Oh, this seems like you're counting widgets or you're ticking boxes." Actually, the purpose of an output measure or a service measure is actually that it is something that we can measure. It's relevant, it's understandable. An outcome is the actual impact or benefit that you are trying to receive, and generally we contribute to that, and our measures ensure that there's attribution, so you can tell that we did have an impact, but it is not solely the council's on its own. So that is why you have a performance framework, and there is a cascade from outcomes, our strategic direction, all the way down to service measures and activity measures. So the results for the outcome measures will come to you separately, because, as I said, it's not just us who are in control of the outcomes and the evidence that it requires to answer that question. So we are reliant not only on our own information, but information of others. And so we are beholden to them to get that information, assess it with our own. There are also some measures in this performance report, and I know this has often been a question, which is around, why is this only a yearly measure? Well, sometimes that is because it's not that we can't be bothered during the year. Again, we do rely on other people, but also the rate of change, it's diminishing returns to actually say what the result is. It takes a long time to actually demonstrate any level of change. The final point I would make is that everything that we have presented has been with, is on the shoulders of our professional integrity. Everything that we have, our measures and our structures have been audited, and we work closely with the audit. And some of these measures and approaches have been in place for some time. So we're put through audit for the LTP, and then we have a yearly audit. So based on sound methodology and also internal assurance and checks. So with that, I offer you this report. Thank you for all your questions and your interest the other 3 times we presented to you on this information. And I'll hand over to my colleagues. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, councillors. I'll just add a little bit more to what Amy has said. So, we are really pleased to present you with this report, which is to provide you with assurance on the delivery of the core services for 2025-26. So the report includes our service measure results, updates on work programs and budgets agreed through the annual plan 2025-26. It also highlights their key achievements from quarter 4 in particular, as well as the emerging issues coming through for the core services and risks that could impact the delivery of the core services as we move forward. I just want to point out that all the results are indicative and unaudited at this stage. As alongside the quarter 4 report, we have been working very hard to prepare the first draft of the annual report, which does contain a lot more information on our performance in it. We have the auditors coming in next Monday, starting Monday the 17th of August, to do the year-end audit. So we will work through with them over the coming month from that date, and then bring forward the final version of the annual report to the Audit and Risk Committee in early October for endorsement, and then to Council for adoption on the 21st of October. As Amy said, in the annual report, we will include a summary of our outcomes reporting, and we are working on that as well behind the scenes to be able to do that reporting at the moment. We will also look to bring a briefing to councillors on the outcomes results once we've got them. So as soon as they're ready, we'll bring a briefing so we can have that discussion with you as well. So the first time you see that won't be in the annual report or that you need to adopt, you will see it before then what those results are saying. So just briefly with the service measure performance, Amy's already given you an update on the 3 service measures that have not been achieved, but we have achieved 33 of 36, which is a really strong performance for the year, very consistent with our results for last year. Amy's given you an update on the 3 we didn't meet, service measures 1, 2 and 32. I will just add for service measure 2, which measures our processing of resource consents within the statutory timeframes. As Amy said, there was a really big jump in the target for that this year. And whilst we haven't met that target, there's a really good news story. We did achieve at 83.6% of consents decided within the timeframes. And that compares to 62.1% the year before that and 26% the year before that. So there is a massive improvement in that. It's just the target has really increased substantially from one year to next. For service measure 32, which Amy said we just narrowly missed out on that, we had rounded it once to the 94.5%. So sorry that we can't round that any further. But there's a good explanation behind that, why we've missed that target with a lot of road maintenance around Christchurch over the year, traffic congestion, particularly around the Te Kaha Stadium events, and for ferries it also reflects the longer boarding times for the new larger vessel, ongoing weather conditions and increased demand in the weekends for that ferry service. So there's also some good news in there in terms of demand for the service, but it is impacting the time frame compliance there, or the time frame we want to meet. If you have more detailed questions on the service measures, can I suggest we have them under each of the core service sections when we've got the senior managers or directors that can answer more details on them. So I won't say anything more on service performance, but Grant would like to talk at a high level to our financial performance for the year.
Thanks, Carmen. Morena koutou. And yes, I'll talk to our indicative year-end results for 25-26 for the financial side of things. As Carmen said, this is all subject to year-end, year-end journals, audit adjustments, all that type of stuff that needs to happen. We won't have audit clearance until the 7th of October, so this is very much a prelim look at the numbers. So the report itself, it says we've got a surplus of circa 13 million and an underspend against budget of around 21 million, or say 6%. And I do need to also mention that surpluses, they do flow back to the reserve accounts, and that relates to the revenue for which that was derived in the first place. So it's got to flow back to its place of where it came from, rather than be used on other things. And given we've known about the material aspects driving the surplus for some time, with the variances reported through the year, we have actually allowed for that in our planning process with the annual plan for 26-27, which is already well underway, and will feature in LTP discussions as well. So that's all flowing through in terms of the fund transfer there. Want to be really clear that we don't have surplus or funds sitting aside looking for good use. We've already deployed that in our planning work that we've done. So that's a good thing to do. On the revenue side of the ledger, revenue per the report is 4.7 million below budget. That's about 1%, so not very much. And that's primarily due to lower cost recovery versus budget for consents and compliance, and lower grant revenue for public transport as well. And as we know, our expenditure tends to drive our revenue. So if we don't spend the money, we don't get the revenue or the grant to go with it. So there's a bit of a correlation there, how they tie together. Finally, in terms of the underspend, as it stands, we've got public transport at 12.4 million. And what I'm doing here is explaining the 21 million or so underspend. 12.4 of that's public transport, and that relates to contract payments being less than budget. And program and other spend deferrals as well, such as electric bus road user charges, the national ticketing system, and various programs like the optimisation program as well for public transport. Other big variance is the regulatory framework at 8.2 million, and part of that is 7.7 million within it, and that's due to a pause in RMA work due to government direction, which we're all really clear on, that's happening at the moment. And that does result in less resourcing needs and in turn less borrowing and debt servicing costs. And within that, 500k of that is to do with interest. That's what that portion is. And the balance is really us needing to do less work because of the pause in the RMA. Therefore, we don't need to borrow for it. So 500k interest, balance not needing to do the work. And that brings me to the end of my financial update. Back to the chair.
Thank you, Grant and team. Just a question for me, then I have a question from Councillor Robinson and Campbell. Speaking of the underspend, there is underspend that we will not spend because there is no home for it due to whatever circumstance. There are, I assume, there is some underspend due to projects that haven't been put in place as yet, and an expectation that they will be taken forward. What percentage of the monies that are sitting there are for projects that are still underway or being brought into the next financial year? And I guess the question comes to Councillor Megan Mackay of, do we have the ability to fund some of those deferred projects? Is the money there? Is it achievable?
Yeah, I mean, materially, most of it has actually already been booked into the annual plan, and a lot of it is public transport. They are big ticket numbers that have gone in there. There's probably some small amounts in the margins, but it'll be a very small percentage that isn't already booked in. And our reserves also are not, hugely flush. Public transport's probably the biggest one, and again, there's plans in place for public transport, big plans in place.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Well, thank you. I've got so many notes and comments, so I'll try and make it understandable at the very least. Just with regards to service measure 1, are we moving on to that bit?
I guess questions would be in a general nature with the staff at the table here.
So
if they are specific to particular core services, then we would ask those questions in the core services. So general questions.
Okay, general question. It's a great summary, but as it's an assurance paper, there's elements of this in general reporting that I'm just a little bit concerned about, that it's not consistent enough right through with detail of everything. And if something, I guess, is a bit of hasn't met the target, I guess, going forward for everything, then I would expect a little bit more detail as to why, rather than maybe just sort of legislation or otherwise. And although we're looking in retrospect, I think it would be helpful, I guess. So because the whole thing links to the long-term plan, would it be possible in the future to have a reference to the commentary within the the annual plan going forward? Even like a brief sort of dashboard about what we're achieving and what we're not, a little bit more detail on that.
Just to help answer that question, is there a particular area you're talking about, or you're talking about the whole report?
Well, as I say, it's quite inconsistent in places. That's what I'm saying. And so if we refer to something that is intrinsically linked to this assurance, because otherwise, if something says it didn't meet the outcome, then I want to know why.
Can I just step in? If we are going to ask a question, let's be specific rather than saying there are inconsistencies. It would be useful, rightly or wrongly, to point out the potential inconsistency that you see as opposed to a general statement.
Okay,
question.
I will do that when we get to perhaps the core services, but it is a general thing that relates to all of them. So,
if I may, so yes, we will. If there's a specific example, please, yes, welcome that through the core services. I would note that this is a fourth quarter, and with particular regard to Service Measure 1, this will be the fourth time that we have reported on this same thing. And we have also done multiple briefings to Council related to for planning, as well as follow-up emails. So in terms of the just to address that particular point, from my perspective, inconsistencies, I think that's a broader issue and quite a bold claim. So we would need to know exactly what that pertains to, because I'm happy for errors, but any sort of view of anything that that is integrity based, I would not accept. So we just need to be really careful with our language. That's all I would ask when we're asking questions.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
So I'm going to raise something that I know Councillor Gerard has raised as well. On page 2 of the core services overview, the second bullet point, the Council approved Plan Change 8 notified on 4th July 2026 with a common sense view, etc., etc., etc. Can I please ask that that bullet point is loaded with value judgments. One person's common sense view is another person's madness. And we also approved Plan Change 8 to be notified. And so I would like to ask that we have a note that this bullet point includes a value judgment that shouldn't be there, and it actually also includes an inaccuracy of what we agreed, which was that Plan Change 8 be notified. And I ask that it be changed for the final version to say it approved Plan Change 8 to be notified, and that the rest of it be removed.
We can certainly look at that. I would say that is certainly not a staff value judgment. We were directed by this council to start the Plan Change 8 process, and also the decision to move forward was several touch points through the council. But I take your point. If that particular wording you have received it in that way, we can amend, but I would not. We do not have value judgments. That is not our role.
Sorry, I'm going to dispute.
Can I just step in and say, yes, I agree it could be interpreted two different ways. I interpreted it that we have notified. You have interpreted it slightly differently. I think we can make a secretarial note to clarify that we have agreed to the notification and that we have not approved the plan.
And so
that's simple.
That's simple, but I do dispute. A common sense view is very subjective. There are people around this table, including me, who don't think that anything about this is simple, easy, common sense. It's quite complex. And so I just ask that none of that sort of subjective language comes into these reports in the future.
We shall put a full stop after the first sentence. Thank you. Yep. You're good with that, Oliver and team?
I can give you that.
Yep. Next question was Councillor Robinson, please.
Sorry.
I know.
So my just for the clarification thing I was talking about before, it wasn't a dig in anything in particular. It was just about, I guess, there's some historic decisions around the RPS. It wasn't about the coastal plan. It was about the RPS. And so just for clarity, I think in 2024, the RPS was ready to be notified, and it went to a meeting and it was decided to be not notified at the time. So I think it would be really cool to have clarity of that nature in here, to say it wasn't just about the legislative change. It had a longer history to that. It was ready to go, but council decided otherwise. So that's kind of what I meant by the consistency of, decisions. So apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard, then we move on, please.
Yeah, just a question about the outcome reporting. It's great that that's coming. Thank you very much, because that dealt with my questions. And so it's just a question around that. Is it possible for the performance to be spatially mapped as well? So just a question about the spatial mapping of performance. So, like, where's the wetland improvement? Where's the enhancement? So there's sort of
So the outcomes report summary that we have in the annual report is reasonably brief. It's not auditable, but we want to make that connection between the outcomes and the work that we're doing. So that is a brief summary in the annual report. The main content of outcomes reporting is online, and every single outcome has a methodology behind a measure and a methodology behind it, a lot of data and information. So I would need to look at those specific ones that you are talking about and see what is all the information we have in the full outcomes report. But that's an online report that's accessible for the community, and there is a lot of information in it. So I would need to look at those particular outcome measures and what's already there. But there is a lot of information online.
Thank you. We will move on. So thank you, team, Grant, Amy, Carmen. We will move now to environmental regulation protection, led by Councillor Mackay, with Brett Aldridge and his team to the table. Thank you. He's on. Is he online or?
Oh, he's online.
Yeah.
It's
No,
small.
he was small there. Yes. I assume he's here because he's online. Yep. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, through your chair. Look, just like to take several minutes to talk to some of the highlights of this core service. And I guess, while people may have different views at the table, we did definitely approve to notify Plan Change 8 in the last financial year or the last quarter, and that was publicly notified in the paper on the 4th of July, and of course that's going through the process and will be reported on in the current year's reporting. I guess the other one that was touched on by Amy and certainly Carmen was around not meeting our service level 2, the statutory timeframes. There is certainly some good news there. We've invested a heck of a lot of money and time and effort in trying to get the issues that were resolved around there. But I think what it shows is the impact of our legacy consents, and that's still hanging over us. Because as Carmen talked about, for 25-26, our overall performance was 83.6% met their statutory timeframes, and that was certainly up from 26 and 23 when we decided to actually take the bull by the horns and deal with our legacy. Just for the benefit to show you the impact of the legacy consents, for applications that were lodged and decided since January 2025, 92.3% met their statutory timeframes, and currently from those that have been put in, these are calendar years now rather than our organisational year, those that have been lodged and decided since the 1st of January 2026, we're looking at 98.7. So while 95% might seem Herculean, I think was the word you used, Amy, target for us for this year, and I think it's very aspirational, I must admit, for this year. but in the long run, I don't think it's a target that we shouldn't be looking to achieve. So, just really want to put that position on the table there. I guess the other ones, if we look back to our Q3 report, we definitely at that stage had our 2 biodiversity targets that were looking like they might not be achieved. So it's pleasing to see that they've actually been achieved. So that's, I think, 10 and 11 from memory. A couple of other little pieces, particularly I think it fell out of our strategy and policy meeting, is the work that we're doing, the engagement with our affected residents, community and industry around the proposed 12 or 24-month monitoring program that's going to come forward for dust management in Yaldhurst and Northwest as part of our long-term planning discussion. And the big one, I think that's probably been pretty visible for at least 6 months, a lot longer than that if you're a Bromley resident, is certainly the response that we've had latterly to the Bromley wastewater treatment plant odour and the abatement notice, and now that those conditions have been met, it's been cancelled. So I just emerging issues and opportunities. I guess there's still a lot of uncertainty about the reform process, but as Chair Dion has mentioned publicly, and we are trying to repeat that our focus remains on ensuring the final framework, whatever that may look like, is workable for Canterbury, and that our regional functions can be implemented effectively. And we will carry on doing our work in the meantime. We've certainly heard a lot about the possibility of what our summer might look like and the impacts there, particularly from El Nino conditions, which have been forecast. The organisation's done quite a bit of work around an integrated approach, so this is all planned already internally, and they're working closely with Civil Defence, CDM and partners to ensure we're prepared for whatever comes at us. And I guess we're thinking of fire and other things there, and floods. So very important to just acknowledge that we can be as prepared as we can, but who knows what we'll get to see in the future. Let's hope it's not too bad. And I guess the other one is, and we've had a little taster of it with 1 or 2 birds with the avian influenza turn up. Nothing in Canterbury, and I understand the latest is nothing the rest of New Zealand at this stage. So once again, our organisation is not a leader in this. They support MPI, but we have a regional preparedness plan on our own land and how we might manage that. So I think that's probably all I need to say. There's probably lots of questions councillors have of staff.
Staff?
No, I think that sums it up very well. We could just go to questions.
Thank you. First question, Councillor Faulkner, followed by Councillor Megan Mackay.
Thank you. Just going to Service Measure 4 in the auditing. Is that just primarily from the in-house perspective, or does that include the quality perceived by the external applicant?
My understanding is we get external views, and we randomly select a whole number of consents, and they do an audit against a number of criteria to come up with that result.
Thank you, Councillor Megan Mackay.
So you will be aware I sent through my 2 questions on the environmental regulation protection, 2 questions in advance. And the first question was really about talking about reform and how, what's going to be as we move forward, what are the transitional gaps? And I just wanted to retract that question, because I think it's actually not a fair or right question to ask in this setting. And I think that being future focused, pretty keen to get on with the natural environment plan as quickly as possible. However, noting it's only a bill at the moment. So just wanted to make clear that question's probably not right for this committee. but can't wait for it to happen and get on with it. And then the other one was talking about the outcome measures and going, we've got these service measures, but how do they relate to wider outcomes? And we had a really good summary of what's going to be coming next on that. So asked and answered well in the previous session. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell.
Looking at Service Measure 18, Local Action Support, I note that we've met our target and met it well, but I also note that this is a significant reduction in satisfaction from the previous year. So my question is just, what are we doing to not only meet our target, but to learn from why there's been less satisfaction, so that we can get it up and be absolutely excellent and smash through everything in future years again too.
Kia ora through you, Chair. You may recall last year we aligned 3 separate funds where we have contestable aspects to the funds into one time frame because responding to the community request for having it once at one and done, if you like. And that's been helpful, but also creates some challenges around, have I applied for the right fund, etc. So one of the pieces of improvement work is around the communication, both to manage the expectations of what will get funding and eligible criteria, etc., support timely and consistent and targeted communications to those that are likely to apply, so they are applying to the right funds. It would be fair that our staff do navigate with people that this fund might be better for you. We've also in the process of developing standard feedback and for successful and unsuccessful applications to provide consistent and clearer and useful examples around the funding decisions. So there's work there. It's a really hard question to answer because everyone would be satisfied if they got money. And we do only get a very small response rate for those that we send it to.
No, look, that's great, thank you, because I think we've communicated in some previous meetings some of the feedback we've received, which is mostly about communication and understanding for some of them why they were unsuccessful. It's not that they're complaining that they didn't succeed, it's that they want to know why so they can do better next time. So, look, thank you, that sounds really fabulous, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nick Ward. Moody, sorry.
I take it as a compliment. Intensive winter grazing, I note that the outcomes are coming in the future and they're not reported here. Here it's saying that work has been done in that quarter through to the 30th of June. So when will the reporting come around how we're going at achieving compliance in this very important high-risk area?
There's not a specific service measure around intensive winter grazing. We run a program that is multifaceted that does include a link with the compliance aspect around those that have, I think it's effort through the farm environment plan aspect. But the winter grazing campaign's multifaceted. The flight aspect is one component. We do a lot of workshops with industry focusing on education advance. We do follow up on ground after the flights if we see areas both prior to grazing starting when the crop is established around critical source areas, etc. And I think we've had currently for this year there's only 2 PEs lodged around the activity of intensive winter grazing compared to I think it was 8 last year.
Thank you. So in terms of creating a sort of a measurable, achievable outcome, like Amy was talking about, the things that we entirely within our control, that would be a discussion for the LTP to create if we want to have a measure, we can actually measure if things are getting better or not in this area. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, or it could be project reporting, or it could be activity reporting. Often in this level of reporting, there needs to be a substantial amount of money that a service measure is tagged against. That's the purpose if we spend this much, what happened and what did we do? So so that would be a service measure. Outcome measures, of course, as we said, are not just our service performance measures and activities that are have accountability through that approach. As Jude said, winter grazing and some of the work that we do is some of it is business as usual, may or may not have a specific budget attached to it. So that in terms of getting attribution between that work and the outcomes that we have, that may be more difficult. But in terms of a project feedback, or what did we find, or an evaluation, or a specific piece of assurance, we can also do that. So those were just examples. That's a mix of the number of tools that we have available to provide information back to you on the impact of our work.
So that could come back when the other outcome reporting comes back. Something there to expand on the fact that we've been doing some work, but what did we find? That might come back then. Yeah.
I think what you're correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm hearing is if you would like a particular briefing on a particular thing, we can absolutely do that. If you're wanting when the outcomes reporting, which is up here, that comes back, that could be a very, very lengthy document if we want all of our activities reflected, because at the moment, as I've said, there isn't a service, as Judah said, there's not a service measure particularly related to that work. So I think there are many ways we can report back to you and give you information. Some of it is related to the long-term plan and the annual plan, and also it goes through audit, versus some of the activity or project reporting that we can provide briefings on.
Thank you. Councillor Andrea Davis, followed by Robinson.
Thank you. I took the liberty of putting the Q3 and the Q4 up on two screens, and I could compare them, and I'm really happy with the detail in this. Thank you so much, because I don't want too much detail, but I want some detail. So I went straight to this key risk table that's new in here, and I'm looking at box 3 on page 12 of the 34, and it says risk of adverse staff well-being, psychosocial impacts given the ERP current operating environment, and it's the sustained uncertainty that we're facing, and also the interactions results in significant impact to staff health and well-being. And I see we have 3 things. Well, it's a likely, serious, and high. Out of all of those boxes, I'm thinking, okay, this is important. We've done 3 things, and what I want to know as a governor is, I know this is going back to April, May, June, and now we're in August. I would like to know that we're tracking on this, that it's tracking in the right direction, and these 3 things we put there to help are the right things, or is there something else? And it's probably not just ERP, right? It's probably all everywhere. Are you able to give me some assurance in maybe a month?
Possibly. I think what we're signalling here is a number of things. We're signalling we have a duty to carry on with business as usual in a period of change and uncertainty, where increasingly our staff are going to start to take opportunities that come for them just because of uncertainty. We are also trying to build a business ready for transition, which is on top of BAU as well, and that just adds an extra pressure. And we are seeing an increase in natural events in some parts of our business, which, on top of everything, create this cauldron of pressure, I guess. We have a number of things. So with regard to metrics, it's something we need to think about. I don't think have good metrics right yet. We probably have a lot of information we gather, and we should pull together to give us some signals. But I do think there are a number of ways we need to come at this, and one is to create the best working environment we can for our people. I do think we also need to, and we are, start to look at the business models we are running that have got us to where we are very well, but may not get us to where we need to go. And we are looking across the operations group at least to just stress test our operating models, our business models, and with a view to how do we make them scalable, how can we make them ready for transition to whatever form may come. So that's our challenge, which just places extra pressure on a group of staff.
Thank you, because that does give me assurance. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson, and we have 5 minutes left on this topic.
I'll be very brief. Just regarding the authorisations RMA consenting and how that we were hoping to achieve 66% money back on user pays. We achieved 6% below that of 60% out of 66. And I'm wondering, it doesn't explain it lightly with, legacy consents, hearings and the likes, but I just wonder if you could tease that out of it, because I don't quite understand the 6% there and how we haven't achieved that. And does that mean that general rates covers that, or it's just not achieved?
A brief comment, but I believe we have a briefing coming today or tomorrow on those matters to further extend that conversation. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. We could probably go into more detail. I think some of the additional complications of the reduced consenting volumes, that's played an added a direct effect on our ability to recover those costs.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Gerard and Councillor Faulkner to finish.
Thank you, Chair. Just my question is around monitoring, really. It's sort of, we monitoring, I feel, is only good if there is there's reporting on it and there's action if there's issues. It's about outcomes on the ground. So, and back to the intensive winter grazing. So, as an example, are we getting value for money for this monitoring? Because I imagine flights do cost, and so it's really if we don't get a briefing, at least a little paper on it, just to outline what it's costing us and what benefits are we getting out of this program.
Through you, Chair, I think it's really important to not just focus on the flight aspect, but the whole program, because it is multifaceted, and the flights have occurred in different regions each year. So we don't fly over the same patch of Canterbury every time. So I think that's really value, because that flight itself is not a monitoring tool over time. It's just a way of engaging with the community in that place, as well as these regional programs for connecting with what is good practice and expectations for, critical source area management, buffer zones, etc. So if we're doing that, I'd rather do a holistic approach. Happy to break out the cost of a flight small compared to the whole program, but we can come back if that's a useful thing. It's one part in a whole bunch of work that we do, obviously. So I'm just conscious of outcomes versus projects that deliver to those. So, I'll take the lead from the council's request.
Thank you, Councillor Faulkner. Quick question.
Page 6.5, improving the abundance of and condition of access to mihi kai and mana whenua. And then I go to outcome 15. There seems to be a dissonance there. In my mind, that outcome sought is widespread over the whole Canterbury region, but it's more, the way it's articulated in 15 is quite specific to Papata Runanga projects. So I think it perhaps needs to be reworded, because when I look at that, I get all enthusiastic and think, wow, this is what we're trying to achieve globally, but we're not. And that has come through in a couple of comments in the annual plan process as well from people. They miss the actual clear direction of what we're trying to achieve.
So I'll answer on the from the hall monitor point of view, and then if I hand over to my colleagues in ops. So we will be looking. That is absolutely part of what happens, and through the the long-term plan later on is around our looking at our outcomes and our service measures. We did actually at the start of the long-term I say that with a slight temper that we did say we weren't going to be doing wholesale changes, but I take your point if it doesn't make sense. Again, it's the issue of having an outcome which is usually community driven or contributed to, and all we do is our impact. If we're lucky, we can demonstrate we've turned the curve. The service performance measure has to be specific to something that we actually do or produce. Hence why it is in that specific language and working with the Papatipu Rūnaka, because that is actually whatever we do has to be solely delivered by us. And please note that language is clumsy. We're not delivering to, we're working with Papatipu Rūnaka, but you take my point. So yes, and I take your point, but hard to get a decent service measure. They're hard to do.
Thank you, team. I think we'll leave it there. Brett, you have a final point?
Yes, if I can just circle back to Councillor Gerard's question around value for money, because it's one I think I'd like to highlight. I think it is a challenge for us, and it is a challenge that we're thinking about very seriously. It is critical for us to be able to show the value for money, especially running into transition where our functions will end up somewhere, and we need to show the value of them to the Canterbury community. The difficulty we have, and it comes back to Amy's performance framework, is drawing the causal links between what we do and the outcomes, and often trying to prove the counterfactual, which is what would happen if we weren't here. So it's a difficult proposition for us, but one that we are thinking very seriously of, and we'll be working on quite in a quite targeted way over the next year or so.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Councillor Mackay and team. We move now to community preparedness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this report should be prefaced by the comments, it's 8 bells and all is well. This is a report which shows that despite what is quite a substantial program of action, everything is in line pretty much within budget and within timeframes and within expectations. So it's a very good report from that perspective. And I just, in terms of the money, I just point out that where we talk about $39 million being spent on flood and river resilience, about 16 or 17 of that comes from targeted rated river or drainage schemes, and the rest is the money that's coming in tranche 1 and tranche 2. So there's a substantial amount of capital input coming from the co-funding Regional Infrastructure Fund, which and Lee's team is heavily involved in, of course, doing that work. And so that's a fair bit of the work. So the report understates the amount of work that's going on, but it actually is delivering to budget and on time. So this is a very good report. I'll take the report as read, but I just will make a couple of comments on page 20 of 34, Two comments really. One is we've had some pre-circulated questions, and two from Councillor Mihi, and I just thought I'd preempt the answers to that by saying that the first question was around the risk involved in some of these projects and how we report on that, whether it's up to Audit and Risk Committee or whether it's to Council. And when we had a Rivers Resilience Committee, the Audit and Risk Committee did make a point of asking, so this is just for completeness, the Audit and Risk Committee did specifically ask us to report, the Rivers team to report on issues where there was a risk of non-delivery and therefore non-funding and therefore an exposure to risk. And I assume, and you guys can confirm, that is still happening, although there is nothing to report at this stage. And the second part of the question really relates to the current and emerging issues, and that is to do with the resilience of our staff when we have major events. And I opined, I think, in the pre-meeting meeting that what puts your team under particular stress is when we have significant events, and our teams are called in to troubleshoot with angry and upset local communities, but not just in Canterbury but across the country, which does put significant stress on our team. And the fact that they do that and they do it with such ability, I think, is a credit to the team. But just in terms of that current and emerging issues, the last bullet point, which is community expectations for increased levels of service, particularly in relation to flood management activities and resilience infrastructure, continue to rise. And it says, and may play pressure on existing funding. I think what it is doing is it does put a lot of pressure on our team because, as we've discussed as councillors, weather events don't only hit where we have funding and jurisdiction in river-rated schemes. When you get a weather bomb in Little River or Kaikoura or Omarama or wherever and it's out of scheme, that puts a huge amount of pressure on our team because we don't actually have the funding and the ability to then go in and say, this is our jurisdiction, we have a responsibility to fix it up. And the way to deal with that is with the Regional Resilience Fund that we're proposing for the long-term plan. So I just put that in. And then the last thing I just wanted to comment is, again, it was a pre-circulated question from Councillor Gerard about the nature-based or multi-beneficial flood and river resilience. I just want to answer that in two points. And one is that from a governance perspective, our role is to set strategic direction and assist our staff with prioritisation. Make sure we've given our staff the tools to do the job, make sure they've got the funding they require to do the job, hold them accountable for non-delivery, and in this case there is no non-delivery. Then how they put that in place, the how and where and why, is up to the staff, and perhaps uniquely with the Rivers team, they are working with our communities through the liaison committees for a lot of the rivers and drainage systems. And so the how and why is done by them. It's not for us to interfere. And so in terms of nature-based solutions, that is part of the toolbox. There is no hard deliverables in terms of what percentage of our rivers are protected by nature-based solutions. It is part of the toolbox and is up to our staff to decide when and where they employ those things. But they are being employed, and to the tune of about 16%, according to this report, and that is the appropriate level of the reporting. So I'm open to questions, John.
Thank you, Ian. Staff wish to make any comment before I open to questions? Thank you. Then Councillor Faulkner.
Thank you. I go back to my original question that I asked this morning, and it was the extent and natural character of braided rivers. And I'll frame that around my restoration project. I'm doing Mahingakai project, biodiversity, and also looking at braided river birds. And the whole project, I couldn't separate out the two different elements. And we've got the natural character of braided rivers sitting sort of independent of all those. And I'm concerned, after listening to conversation this morning on Councillor Mackenzie's meeting with Stuart Smith and the issues that are flowing around the rivers, whether we're missing an opportunity to enhance the natural character by having them sitting in this silo. And that's my question. Is it am I seeing a silo, or is it more intricate than that?
Through you, Chair, part of the answer to that question is the natural character piece is deliberately in both core services. And it is particularly in this core service because it is linked to our Braided River Revival Whakahamanu na Awa Pākihi 100-year strategy. And it is because we try and deliver through works on the ground multi-value flood protection. The best example of that is to do with vegetation. Of our $250 million worth of vegetation assets, we're moving to a model where appropriate and where budget allows to underplant with native plants and remove a significant amount of weeds. The best natural character example in the last 5 years is probably the work done on the Ashi Rakahuri River between the gorge and the Okuku confluence, which was done with shovel-ready money at the time, which has allowed the river to braid again and removed a significant amount of weed habitat. We are working, and I think it's page 14 of the 100-year strategy references an implementation plan, and I know that staff are working with service measures 13, 14 and 20 to put together a more comprehensive place where everything can be seen and seen spatially as well on GIS of all the values delivered through river work. So I don't see them siloed, but sometimes at a site you do use the best tool for a job, and that doesn't always include a biodiversity or a multi-outcome, but wherever possible, we are actively including that in our work in line with our codes of practice that enable that work in a regulatory sense.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
So I don't know where to start with my questions. Yeah, thank you so much for the report. It's great. And obviously, yeah, I'm interested in the nature-based solutions, but more using our floodplains and our flow paths and maybe sort of looking at spatial planning and because we got the regional spatial plan coming up, and it's really how can we plan for the future with land use so that we're safeguarding and not putting development infrastructure in harm's way. So in settlement of obviously subdivisions, they're always there. So it's sort of getting that regional spatial plan underway and thinking about it now. And with that, I'm sort of thinking, could we possibly work with landowners to say, you've got productive land that is in a floodable area. Are you prepared to manage it so that periodically it will be flooded, but we will manage the floodwaters over a stopbank weir or whatever, so that it is manageable for your land and that you will need to, remediate after a flood. But, there could be cheaper options, and that land could be have rate rebating rather than being rated on, sort of thing. So I just think, maybe we could look at different options and how we think about our rivers. Yeah.
Lee, can I just jump in here? Look, I think some of those questions are actually operational rather than governance, and I'm not sure that this is the appropriate place to ask them. I think it's more appropriate to bring up that sort of discussion in one of our working groups.
Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just add some context to the spatial plan. We do have 3 or 4 floodways mapped in our flood protection and drainage bylaw, which protects our $850 million worth of assets. They are our dedicated mapped floodways, and it'll be very important, depending what happens with bylaws in the future, that they aren't lost. The main ones are on the Rakaia, the Rangitata and the Arari rivers. Where it gets interesting is where stop banks have 1 in 50-year levels of service and the community doesn't necessarily want to pay or can't afford at the moment to upgrade them. Water does get out of those rivers, and the trick is how you return them with other banks. So those areas aren't necessarily mapped. They generally are paddock areas, and most landowners know that will happen to a certain level. Where it gets tricky is where landowners change. So there is something to look at there in the future, but the key thing will be making sure that our bylaw is transferred as a start.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
I promise I'll be quick. Just regarding 26 and 27 service measures for navigational safety, I just want to applaud the 100% mark there, just to say there. And also just looking and referring to the outcome sought, which is decreasing the number of navigational safety incidents in the region. And it's great that we've attended all those events. I'm just wondering how we're tracking with the decreasing element, and would that information also give some description or content to the coastal plan going forward? I imagine it would. Could you just tell me how we're tracking there?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I'll have to check with the team on the exact numbers, but they do track the numbers and do collect data from Maritime NZ and the Coast Guard and that type of thing. Sometimes it is a little bit out of our control how many incidents there are per year, depending on the exact circumstances. What I think this is getting at is doing everything within our control to educate the public with water safety events. And one action we have taken now is having a staff member based permanently down in Twizel to be based at jet boat ramps and work towards that target. So it is indicative, but the data does go up and down depending on the year.
I was probably being more probably specific with probably commercial, some of the incidents that we've attended that's large scale and quite expensive and polluting. So more that type of thing, if that could, the information on that could come forward as a reflection on where we're tracking, and if there's anything going forward for the long-term plan, how we should look at going forward to reduce that number. That'd be cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Megan Mackay. And I note we've only got a few minutes left, literally, on this topic for everyone else that wants to ask a question.
Sure, I'll be quick. First question was answered in any event from Councillor Mackenzie and Amy and Grant, that anything carried forward is captured in the annual plan, so I felt really comfortable with that. The second part was about, which Councillor Mackenzie partly answered, is around how the report identifies a high workforce capability risk during the significant and current emergencies, which are ever increasing. And I just wanted to know from a staffing perspective whether there is any, what you see as the most significant gap that we need to take into account in terms of the staffing capability and resilience.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Current context, since this report was written, we've had the Kaikaura event that has pushed us to maximum capacity. So we are very conscious that one of our biggest risks over the next couple of months is having another event. We do have an inter-council agreement with other councils to come and help us during an event. So in the 2021 floods, Otago came, Taranaki came, Horizons came. So for that initial response phase, we can bring in surge support. Where it becomes tricky from a capacity sense is the recovery. So in the Kaikoura area, we're looking at around $20 million. It won't be as big a recovery as 2021 because a large amount of the cost in Kaikoura is rock, but it's still a substantial amount of work. What Brett referred to before in terms of looking at different business models going forward is top of mind. So we're currently looking at how we could set up a procurement panel of surge consultants. We've got one for contractors, so for plant hire, so for diggers and digger drivers and chainsaw people, but we don't currently have a quick procurement model in place to bring in modelers and consultants that could do bits of scheme reviews or post-recovery work for us. So Bay of Plenty has set up something similar, and we will copy and paste as much as we can, but that's an immediate action we're looking at.
Thank you. I will ask a question myself from this time. CDM budget, we as councillors put a hold in saying we don't need any more great expansion of monies, but I do ask the question, our CDM staff are under stress. The work they're doing in response, a bunch of BAU work is falling behind because we just don't have the capacity, and we combine that with legislative change with the EM bill and an increase in expectations around planning. Do you believe we have enough money in a budget going forward to fully resource our CDM team at the Justice Precinct as opposed to our Rivers team to achieve the outcomes that our communities expect?
Thank you for the question, Chair. There is a resourcing issue within our civil defence and emergency management team, and that is a current issue. They have just filled important vacancies, so at the moment they're just down 0.6 of a resource, so they're nearly at full capacity with an existing resource. Their work program going forward is growing, and it'll grow further with the EM bill. So I am aware that James Thompson, the manager in that space, is proposing to come and have a conversation around resourcing as part of the draft long-term plan, because there is a significant amount of work to do there.
Thank you for that. And one further question, Councillor Davis, before we move on to the next topic.
Thank you, Lee. Well done. I noticed you exceeded every single target. You're over the target. And I'm just wondering, though, about that, the last one, the hydrometric network sites. Would you like to see us fund more, get that to 100%, try to really push that one?
Through you, Chair, as I understand that target, and there are some other staff in the room that may be able to help here, it's difficult to get to exactly 100% because of a combination of digital and other elements. We are working very hard behind the scenes to make sure that our network is as resilient as possible, because it's really important that those rainfall and flow sites work. There is an internal project underway to support that, and we have received $2.5 million of central government co-investment to make sites more resilient on the ground. So this financial year there's 35 sites that will be upgraded in the field. Alongside that, our digital team is looking at a digital resilience strategy, so we do expect the percentage to increase, but as I understand it, it's really hard to get it at 100, but we're pushing it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ian and team, for this. We will now move to public transport and hopefully finish just before 1:15, so we can then move to public excluded. Yes, Councillor Lamont, once the team's at the table.
Thank you, Chair. I am happy to speak to public transport on behalf of Councillor Campbell and Councillor Davies. Just see me as Councillor Net Camvies for the next 5 minutes or so. We try our best at public transport to be the golden child of the core services. I'm not sure if we are yet the favourite child, but we are so We continue to provide this vital, essential service despite the headwinds of time and circumstance, including massive fuel spikes, shifting sands of local government reform, and an increasingly constrained fiscal environment. A few highlights and an overview. The patronage increased by 7.3% compared with quarter 4 last year, with 4 million passenger trips recorded during the quarter. Across the year, 15.2 million passenger trips were recorded, which is a 0.7% increase on 24-25 year. The network review generated more than 11,500 submissions, which is the largest public transport consultation undertaken by Council, and that provided a significant evidential base for future network planning. We had 10 new electric vehicles introduced to the My Way Timaru fleet, making it fully electric and improving accessibility through step-free boarding and flexible seating. The customer uptake of Motu Move contactless payments continued to grow. There were just under 1.5 million contactless payments recorded between the introduction in November 25 and 30th of June 26. We've had consultation on the proposed Aranui service that received more than 870 submissions. The event direct by Metro supported travel to and from events at One New Zealand Stadium, with 7,245 passenger trips recorded during the quarter. In terms of service measure performance, 6 of the 7 public transport service measures were achieved in 25-26, as we've heard. Service measure 32, that measures bus and ferry punctuality, was not achieved, with 94.5% against 95%. We just didn't want to boast it being too perfect, so we just needed to keep it down just a smidge. In terms of financial performance, the indicative year-end results show public transport expenditure was 12.4 million below budget and revenue was 2.9 million below budget. The main drivers were lower bus and ferry services expenditure, including deferred electric bus road user charges, unspent network optimisational budget, delivery of Route 85 improvements by a private operator, a favourable My Way contract award, lower than assumed NZTA indexation, national ticketing solution delays, program timing delays and vacancies. Revenue was also lower because grant funding is claimed against actual expenditure, although the fare revenue was higher than budget due to an above-budget average fare per trip and higher patronage. We've got some current and emerging issues and opportunities that are prescient at the moment. We've got the fuel price volatility that keeps us on our toes, thanks to international things beyond our control. We've got the simplifying local government proposal. We've got the patronage growth is concentrated on the higher use services, which creates capacity pressure on parts of the network, and that requires careful deployment within our existing fleet constraints. We've got future public transport improvements, and they remain exposed to funding. We've got workforce infrastructure procurement and delivery partner constraints. Finally, total mobility demand continues to grow, with quarter 4 trip volumes 4.3% higher than the same period last year. And customer demand continues to be monitored as providers respond to changes in the operating costs, including the fuel increases the fare increases and the fuel surcharges. We will continue to provide this core service and meet the expectations. We will continue to do what we possibly can. We want to ensure the service is as effective, efficient and affordable as possible. We will be like Fred Flintstone in his buggy, driving with purpose into the future. We're not quite sure what that future looks like yet, but we'll do it as well as we can with purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
No, it's a good summary of what we've done. Thank you, Councillor. And well, happy to answer questions. Derek is here and acting for Stuart while Stuart is on leave.
Councillor Faulkner.
Thank you, Councillor Lamont. The golden child of core services is quite evident in the wording. I look at the previous CPRH and the risks. We have major or serious if flood protection doesn't happen. But if the buses don't turn up, it's catastrophic. So how do we get on an equitable footing?
I think that's a very good question, Councillor. I think that's partly a reflection of our increasing maturity in risk management as we evolve and develop it within each of the core services. And then we need to take a view to ensure consistency and equitable treatment across the organisation. So I think it's something we need to pick up going forward.
Any further questions? Councillor Campbell.
Hopefully I can continue the golden child theme going through here. So I'm looking at the overview and the bottom of page 24 and top of page 25, which Nettles mentioned that fair revenue higher than budgeted, and also the private revenue ratio was higher than our target. So I'm wondering, is this a result of more full fares being paid rather than concessions? So full fares being higher as a percentage of total fares compared to concessions. And does that mean we're actually getting more people commuting using our buses rather than it being school children and pensioners and community services card users who all get a concession?
I think my short answer is we would need to go and have a detailed look at the figures and get back to you. It is something that we would expect to pick up through the fare review, which we'll be coming to you later on in the year with.
Just to add to that, one of the things that influenced the achievement of the private revenue ratio, which obviously we're extremely pleased about, is that actually some of the work that we were originally intending to do, we didn't actually undertake, which would have increased the costs, but wouldn't have actually resulted in any work or any additional patronage during the year. I think it's also fair to point out that as we roll out the national ticketing solution, we will have far more much richer source of data to be able to provide much more insights into who is travelling where, when, and the analysis that you're talking about. But we will have the information you talk about, we just don't have it available.
Thank you. Councillor Claire Mackay.
Thank you. Just a very small one that piggybacks off that question. I knew we should have been more aspirational, but we're talking about the new private revenue ratio, and that's what's talked about. But some of us have been sitting at the table for a little bit longer, and we talk about, I think it was a fair ratio, fair box. So how does that compare? I'm sure you're keeping the fare box figures as well in the back of my. What do they look like compared to what we have had in the past? Because when I started here 10 years ago, our hope was for 50% or closer to that, but it seemed...
So we do still continue to produce a monthly public transport dashboard, which I think is available on our website. That includes both the private revenue and the fare box recovery. I don't have the specific figures, but it's fair to say that fare box recovery is higher than private revenue because it's the way that it's calculated. One of the things that we did draw to council's attention when government indicated the intention to implement private revenue is that it does look like a reduction in our ability to recover costs, but it's just the basis of the calculation, and that's why we continue to report both.
Thank you, Councillor Megan Mackay.
My question is, which I wasn't going to ask, but since we've got 5 minutes, it's actually relating to...
You've got one.
Quarter past.
I've changed.
You've changed the rules. It related to treaty partnership that I did send through in advance. So it wasn't public transport, but I wasn't quite sure where in the meeting we would get the opportunity to ask it. So it's not a PT question. It is about the treaty partnership that I emailed in advance, and I said that quarter two said that following the refresh 2-year agreement that there was going to be an implementation phase for the protocols and to determine runanga priorities and aspirations. And but then quarter four report didn't really talk about that. And I just wanted some assurance of what implementation looks like and to ensure that partnership commitments are being reflected across those 3 core services.
Kia ora, Councillor, through you, Chair. The implementation of the protocols is ongoing. It hasn't been quite as speedy as we would have liked due to other government announcements that have come in and delayed our work programs. We have 2 that are substantially complete at the moment and are about to start moving through internal checks and socialisation. We've got active conversations on another 3 right now, and the other remaining 5 we're working in the background to prepare information and current state information in advance of Papatipu Runaka being ready to have those kōrero with us. In terms of your broader question around how that's reported through in the performance reporting, that's a continuous improvement project that's going on internally, so you will see improvements over time. It's a work in progress as we work both to provide the assurance through the reporting, but also to ensure that partnership aspirations are built into all of our work programs across the organisation.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, last question.
I noticed that in these, the catastrophic extreme, the first 2 boxes, it's not just money, is it, for PT? It's all about the operators and the constraints because everything in the current activities to manage these risks, I mean, it is about the money, but what can we do about the constraints that relate to the operators and the lack of control that we have over that?
I guess the other risks and constraints that we've identified are ones that are always here. They always have been here, and generally to date, there's been the odd hiccup, shall we say, when they have caused problems. But most of the time, we managed to control them reasonably well. I mean, if we look back, we can say there was a national driver shortage. We ended up having to cut some services as a result because we were hit by that. We were actually much less affected than the other major PTAs. Beyond that, operational constraints, there's bike racks, again, a national thing that we dealt with. So I guess what I'm saying is that the actions we currently take and continue to take are doing pretty well at controlling these things, in my opinion. So those risks aren't going to go anywhere. We have to be very careful when we procure, when we set up our contracts, how they're managed through those contracts. There will be no way of eliminating them, though.
Add to that, I mean, another example is the security issues that we had a couple of years ago, that we created a forum, met a number of times to help resolve that issue. We work very closely with the operators and have regular meetings with them to discuss a very good relationship with both of them. And equally, things like, there is, I think Auckland have driver screens. Our drivers, our operators don't want them. And so we respect that. So we work very closely with them. And the one performance measure that we didn't achieve was actually, it was a reflection of the amount of roadworks that are going on, which are needed, but it's unavoidable in some respects.
Thank you.
So could I add to that as well? I think what we should recognise here is it all loops back to funding. Bike racks, we came up with a solution, but that solution cost us money to deploy. National driver shortage, there was a wage increase, which cost us money to deploy. Most of those risks can be mitigated if there's enough money. In a more fiscally constrained environment, they may rear their heads a bit more.
Thank you, team. Thank you, Councillor Lamont and team. That comes to the end of the 3 core services. Is there any absolutely pressing question in general, other than one that would be asked by Councillor Gerard? One question.
Where is waste in this whole thing? We've got a regional waste committee with a regional waste plan, but also, where does waste fall in under? Where does it fall under core service and contamination of land? Is that where it falls under, or no?
Excuse me, through you, Chair. Just looking through the quarterly report, but it's in the CPRH core services. We have the contaminated land, waste and natural hazards service. And as you rightly pointed out, we have a joint waste committee at a regional level that is dealing with the waste across management across the region. So we have staff in our teams upstairs that are dealing with waste, and I believe you've had some briefings on that as well previously. So that's where that's captured within our core services.
Thank you for that. I will bring this part of the session to close. And could I please have a mover and seconder for these reports? Thank you, Councillor Faulkner, Councillor Davis. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We now move to the Regional Delivery Committee Resolution Status Report. When I look at that, I see that we have one piece of work in progress, which is relation to Wilding Pines. Everything else is in the green. I think we should take that report as read. Could someone move that we accept the report? Thank you, Councillor Davis, Councillor Campbell. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. We move now to the report of the Chair. Again, I think we will take it as read. Are there any specific questions to that report anyone wishes to ask, other than Councillor Gerard? I was just trying to give someone else an opportunity. Very, very briefly.
With your report, thank you very much, Chair. I would like to ask you about number 8 in your item 8 to deal with the emergency operations during the Kaikoura flood event. Just were the Takahanga marae involved, and just how was the activities there, Chair?
Very quick answer, yes, they were. They are integral to the responses now that happened in Kaikoura. And from what I understand, their services are really well appreciated, well organised and put in place. And I would ask then if we just do make a note under that item 8, recognising the role of Takahanga marae in the response to Kaikoura. Thank you. No further questions. Could I have someone please? Moved, Councillor Faulkner, seconded, Councillor Claire Mackay. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Sorry for rushing you through. Now brings us to the resolution to go into public excluded. Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Claire. Seconded, Councillor Faulkner. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? We're carried. We're back live. Is there anything further I need to say on this meeting other than the next one will be in 3 months' time, roughly? 18th of November. And we will start again with our briefings at 1:15. So thank you for your time and consideration. See you back at 1:15 in the capable hands of the chair. And we'll see if